Well, I'll just add another thing that's illegal to what Trump is doing. Trump walked onto the south lawn of the White House on Thursday to applause from his sycophant supporters as he prepared to tout his efforts to roll back regulations. He was flanked on one side by a blue truck weighed down by years of regulatory burden, and on the other by a red truck that had an empty bed to illustrate regulatory freedom. Overhead, an industrial-sized crane had the words Trump administration printed in clear view. The fake president proceeded to give a speech that offered no new policy announcements but was heavy on attacks on presumptive Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden and his platform. The event was the latest example of how Trump has turned the White House into his preferred campaign backdrop for overtly political gains, as the coronavirus pandemic makes his trademark Klan rallies impractical. In the process, Trump is breaking the decades of practice by past presidents. To me, what happened is that he can't go out to do the muck and mire politics that he does so well, and that obviously his inbred base loves, and so he's brought the muck and mire into the Rose Garden, said Barbara Perry, a presidential scholar at the University of Virginia's Miller Center. The White House sees the events as an opportunity for Trump to contrast his agenda with that of Biden's as the 2020 election draws near. The event with the crane wasn't Trump's only political event in the White House this week. On Thursday, the White House announced a press conference that turned into an announcement on U.S. policy towards Hong Kong. It then morphed into a myriad of attacks on Biden, who is leading Trump nationally, and in swing states and in swing state polls, Republicans were among those criticizing the president on substance and political strategy. Karl Rove, a former chief of staff to former President George W. Bush, argued on Faux News that Trump should have delivered more focused remarks on China and Hong Kong and spent less time attacking his Democratic opponent. Rule number one, if you're an incumbent president running for re-election, your most powerful presence is that the President of the United States, Rove said Wednesday. You have the biggest megaphone, the biggest platform, and you have the greatest ability to control the quality and content and direction of your message if you act in that way. Don't use presidential events as campaign events. Try and turn campaign events into what they call presidential events, said Rove, who has been informally advising the Trump campaign. Alex Conant, a GOP strategist and former spokesperson in Bush's White House, echoed those same criticisms in an interview. One of the advantages that a president running for re-election has is the trappings of the White House, Conant said, and you don't need to be overly political to score political points when you're in the Rose Garden. In addition to the Rose Garden, basically almost like a maggot speech, Trump went after Biden during an event this week in the East Room, highlighting positive actions by law enforcement. He prepared remarks during the deregulation event on the South Lawn and amounted to a campaign-style Klan rally diatribe that warned Biden's platform threatened our entire economy and our very way of life. That's exactly what you just did. You basically destroyed our economy and threatened it, and you destroyed our very way of life. The White House has brushed off criticism of Trump's use of the White House backdrops for politically charged events. I don't see anything inappropriate with the comments the president has made. I do. Chief of Staff Mark Meadows told reporters this week, arguing Trump was highlighting substantive policy differences with Biden. The press secretary, Kayleigh McEnany, bristled at a question about one of Trump's anti-Biden screeds, telling the reporter, your real problem was the fact that the president gave a very good, powerful speech from the Rose Garden. No, not really. McEnany was quick to point out that the Hatch Act, which prohibits White House staffers from engaging in partisan political activities, does not apply to the president or vice president. Yes, it does. But experts say compliance with the Hatch Act is not the issue with Trump's recent events. Instead, they argue that Trump is using taxpayer dollars to fund attacks on his presumptive opponent and is flouting decades of precedent and how past presidents have drawn the line between governing and campaigning. I think that has been demonstrated. I think what has been demonstrated is that as the fake president continues to feel more and more vulnerable politically and electorally, he and his staff are stepping up their abuses of federal ethics laws to help pump up his poll numbers, which won't work, said Donald Sherman, Deputy Director of Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington, a watchdog group that has repeatedly criticized the Trump administration. The Rose Garden in particular has traditionally been used by presidents to host foreign leaders, welcome championship sports teams, pardon turkeys, and deliver major addresses, but Trump has been more brazen, using it to tout his fake accomplishments and veer off script. At least in practice, presidents are much more restrained in the White House setting, said Julian Zelizer, a political history professor at Princeton University. You try to create some kind of sense of separation between governing and campaigning, and obviously everything any president says is intensely political, especially in an election year, but there is still an effort to separate them. Trump just lowers any kind of restraint and barrier and goes all out onto campaigning, and I think that's what people react to. Trump has flouted ethics norms dating back to when he was campaigning for office in 2016 and declined to put his business interests in a blind trust. He regularly promotes books of allies on Twitter, travels to his own properties on the weekends, and this week sparked fresh controversy by posing for a photo with Goya Products as the company CEO. A Trump supporter drew criticism from his support of Trump. The White House has shown no indication that he intends to let up on using White House events to push his 2020 campaign messaging. So I want to thank everybody. 45 said after speaking for more than an hour, and we'll be having these conferences again. Now, like I said, but what he's fucking doing is illegal. Just like when he held up that can of Goya beans, it's against the law to basically promote any type of item for political gain, and that's what Trump did when he held up the Goya beans and stuff like that. So if you like the video, give the video a like and subscribe to the channel, and make sure to hit the notification bell so that when I post a new video, you will then you will see that in the notifications. So I'll see you then.